basic idea is that we know a great deal about why people get involved in politics, the kind of things they do more broadly, so not just voting, but going to demonstrations, volunteering, doing all sorts of things that benefit the community. We know about why people do it as individuals. We know about how things happen collectively, so the kind of dynamics that we see at play. We know a little less about the social aspect of it. So why is it that when people start talking about things, especially nowadays on social media, there is a kind of an impetus that people begin to share, to take part in collective action, do things, benefit them, benefit the community. And oftentimes these days that happens online, where something that seems like a very minor grievance, say complaint that someone might have, gains momentum, gains a lot of attention and interest, and all of a sudden you see people spilling over into the streets and expressing their political demands in ways that sit outside what we would understand to be traditional ways of doing politics, right? So voting and being active politically in ways that most of us would recognize as being the mainstream democratic ways of doing politics. So our interest has been in this kind of social dynamic that we've seen at play online. And we know a lot about why strategically certain actors will do things online to instigate this kind of drive, the impetus. We know less about what motivates people to do things in a concerted way. And I don't mean individuals, I mean how things happen in such a way that one learns from the other. One understands a grievance through conversation, through dialogue, through deliberation. So that's the kind of the backdrop for the project. We wanted to understand how people learn from each other, how people learn to take part, which is the acronym for the project, and then fundamentally what that means in terms of the political outcomes, right? So once we see that people are talking to each other, they kind of facilitate a learning experience, then they validate that experience again through various things that happen online. People might be liking something on social media, they might be sharing a post on social media. That has its own momentum, but it's a social phenomenon that we can study, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with this project.
My name is Matthias. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the Take Part project, and my job is to coordinate the protest event analyses and social media analyses in the project. And that basically means we try to find out what protest events happened in each of Take Part's case countries. And maybe more importantly, who participated in these protest events. For example, this can be political parties, individual activists, trade unions, or civil society organizations. Following up from this protest event analysis, we collected social media data, basically trying to find the digital traces of communication that these organizations leave. Or more bluntly put, if an organization protests, what do they write about it on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, or on TikTok? And collecting all this social media data allows us to do a range of empirical analyses, mostly quantitative, like content analyses, network analyses, etc. And just to give you a brief example, more recently, we've been interested in the question of whether emotional tonality, so basically the emotion of a social media post, transmits into the emotion of a comment that an individual writes. So, for example, an organization that participated in a protest event writes a social media post about this, and this is very angry in nature. We're asking ourselves, is there some process of social learning that leads to individuals also responding in an angry tone? Or do they respond in a very affirmative, or do they respond in a critical tone? And this is just to give you an idea of what kind of analyses we can do with social media data and what questions we are interested in the Take Part project.
Part of the survey we're conducting in the Take Part project looks at how protest exposure impacts the participation and support of the individuals among different issues. So the two-panel survey tries to look at how looking at the protest or hearing about it or participating influences your opinion on the issue that you are either supporting or are against it. We are looking at both proximal exposure, so seeing if you are closer to a protest, you tend to support it more. This is specific for bigger cities in which protests happen more often and are more visible, as well as protests that tend to go inside the country and decentralize. And the other dimension of protest exposure is temporal exposure. So how does seeing a protest more often impact your opinion on the issue? This is also especially true for things like frequency of protests. So protests that tend to make the news more than a week, they generally give an idea of bigger salience, so that the issue is actually important. And besides that, protests that do not reach the mainstream media and reach only the social media have a tendency to die down in a couple of weeks.
My colleagues and I have been responsible for the coding part side of things from the protest event analysis. What we did is look at thousands of articles and pick up protests, then code location, date, organizations involved, the reason for protests. What we've noticed that international events like the Russian invasion have ripple effects throughout Europe, and a lot of the protests that we have in these countries are connected, be it through civic actions or industrial actions. For example, what we see in Spain is the tractor raids or highway blockades from the farmers. We've seen camps and massive demonstrations in the United Kingdom when it comes to Palestine. We've seen education strikes in Romania, violent anti-government protests in Hungary, or environmental protests in Germany.
În acest proiect am intrat cu scopul de a lua interviuri în limba maghiară, deci persoanelor din Ungaria, pentru că Ungaria face parte unul dintre cele 5 țări care sunt implicați în acest proiect. Însă am observat că pentru acest lucru trebuie să creăm în primul rând o bază de date în care introducem toate organizațiile non-guvernamentale din Ungaria care se ocupă de organizarea protestelor și să vedem dacă acestea într-adevăr postează astfel de postări în legătură cu scopul și cu subiectul pe care noi îl studiem. Așadar, prima dată am făcut baza de date, după care ne-am uitat la ce postări au și când au postat ultima dată, după care a început contactarea persoanelor respective. După ce am contactat persoanele și ne-au și răspuns la invitație, au început interviurile propriu-zise, în care noi foarte mult am vrut să vedem care este strategia lor, dar cum reușesc ei să acapareze atenția următorilor lor, în primul rând, și cum reușesc să determine pe aceștia ca din offline să participe online la proteste.
As part of Take Part, I'm mostly working on the survey package, and through the survey, we are running nationally representative surveys in 5 different European countries in order to inquire citizens about their media habits, their social media habits, their political participation, so we can study how their exposure of online news and social media and the kind of things that they see online affect their political participation, and notably in protest. As part of this survey, I'm particularly excited about 2 survey experiments that we embedded in the questionnaire. One is a conjoint experiment in which we show respondents different protest images with different characteristics that are embedded in different social media interfaces, and then we ask them to select which one they would be more likely to agree with, or in which one they would be more likely to participate. And through a series of analyses, we're able to know which characteristics of protests or which characteristics of social media platforms make more likely that people agree or disagree with the protest, and that people participate or refrain from participating in a protest.
I'm part of the team who organized cross-national survey, which is a crucial component of the study of the complex methodology. The survey is based on all the previous components, which included analysis of social media and interviews. It is based on large samples in each country. It has an innovative questionnaire. and is the result of the expertise of all the members of the project, and so far has been a tremendous learning experience for all of us, young but also experienced members of the team. It has a panel approach, so the most important results will be available after the second wave of the survey. And we plan to use complex and innovative statistical methods to extract as much as possible of this data.
So in matter of dissemination and how the project communicates with the general public, our website is our main way of communicating. People can find in there things about the project, like objectives, activities. Also, they can find things about us, the team. They have a research blog on the website, so they can have updated findings on the project. We also disseminate on Facebook, so people can find us on social media. I think it's helpful because if you don't have enough time to keep yourself posted with protests all over Europe, you can use our website to catch up. In matter of how we are communicating with stakeholders, we actually did a mapping of the principal stakeholders. We covered the international stakeholders and also NGOs, businesses and institutions in each country.
So one of the things that we've done was to, at the start of the project, was to try and map out what we understood to be events where people came together in 5 different countries where the project is looking at this social phenomenon, and they are Romania, the UK, Spain, Hungary, and Germany, not in alphabetical order. And what we've tried to do was, and this was to begin with, to see what protests were taking place, what were the subjects, what were the topics people were, coming together to protest on. And then from that point onwards, we scaffolded additional work that looked at then the footprint of those protests online, trying to understand where the conversations were taking place, if they were taking place online, who was driving them. And from there onwards, we decided to basically look at what was going on online, analyze the social media data, respond in real time to some of these events, to kind of try and unpack and explain some of the things that we were seeing. For instance, on TikTok, there were protests in Romania at the start of the year, this year, in the run-up to the elections, the presidential elections, where one of the candidates was banned from running. And what we wanted to understand was what was the dynamic on TikTok, what people were talking about, why that was happening, how it was happening, and we saw that it was happening across a number of different countries, and what kind of takeaways we could take from that. And we publish a lot of these insights on our research website. We have a research blog, and there people can go and see how this work looks in kind of real time. We're also doing a little more than that. So we want to understand whether some of the things that we're observing through the social media data analysis actually have any kind of resonance outside of these groups that we're looking at, we're monitoring online. So we're running a survey in all of these 5 countries that's basically looking at things that, like the repertoire of actions that people take, so things that people do politically, not just the things that we've observed, but more widely where the things that we've observed might sit, how common the things that we're looking at might be across the population, the entire population of a country, and then running some experiments to see how people will respond to some of the things that we've observed, and the kind of the learning dynamics that we expect are at play online, and especially on social media.